Commander Hana pressed her palm against the cold observation window of Lunar Station, watching the alien vessel grow larger by the minute. The ship was unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Its crystalline hull shifted colors from deep purple to silver, catching Earth's distant blue light and scattering it like a prism. The vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, dwarfing their modest lunar outpost like a whale beside a minnow. "Ma'am, they're requesting docking permission," reported Lieutenant Kim Woo from the communications array. His voice carried a slight tremor that he couldn't quite hide. This was it. First contact. The moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Hana straightened her uniform and nodded. "Grant them access to Bay 7. And Kim?" She turned to face the young officer. "Remember your training. Stay calm, stay polite, and record everything." The docking bay's atmosphere processors hummed to life as the alien shuttle approached. Through the reinforced viewing ports, Hana watched a smaller craft detach from the mothership. This vessel moved with an unsettling fluidity, as if it were swimming through space rather than flying. Its surface rippled like liquid mercury, and strange symbols pulsed along its sides in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Li Jin, Lunar Station's xenobiologist, joined Hana at the observation deck. "Energy readings are off the charts," he whispered, checking his tablet. "Whatever powers their ships, it's nothing like our fusion drives. The quantum signatures suggest they're manipulating space-time itself." The shuttle landed with barely a whisper, its mercury-like hull solidifying into a more conventional metallic surface. For several minutes nothing happened. Then, without any visible doors opening, 3 figures simply materialized outside the craft, as if walking through solid matter. Hana felt her breath catch. The aliens stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in what looked like living armor that shifted between scales and smooth plates. Their heads were elongated, with large, multifaceted eyes that seemed to capture and reflect light from impossible angles. Most unsettling were their limbs, which appeared to have too many joints, bending in ways that defied human understanding of anatomy. The lead figure wore additional ornamental pieces that glowed with inner light. Ambassador Kethra, according to their transmissions. His companions flanked him like guards, their armor darker and more aggressive in appearance. "Atmospheric compatibility confirmed," announced Chief Park So from the environmental station. "They're breathing our air just fine. Whatever modifications they've made to themselves, they're impressive." Hana made her way to the docking bay, her security team maintaining a respectful but ready distance. The main doors hissed open, and she stepped forward to greet Earth's first alien visitors. Kethra's voice emerged from a small device floating near his chest, the translation crisp, but carrying an undertone of mechanical coldness. "Greetings, primitive ones. I am Ambassador Kethra of the Veltar Confederation. We have traveled far to bring you the honor of joining our glorious empire." The alien's multifaceted eyes fixed on Hana with an intensity that made her skin crawl. There was something in that gaze, a casual dismissal that suggested he was looking at livestock rather than an intelligent being. "We have absorbed 847 species into our confederation," Kethra continued, his translator rendering the words with bureaucratic efficiency. "Each has found peace and purpose under our guidance. Your world shows promise, despite its primitive nature." One of the guards gestured with a limb that split into multiple appendages, each ending in what looked like both a finger and a claw. A holographic display materialized in the air between them, showing star maps with systems marked in different colors. Red zones dominated the display with small pockets of blue and green scattered throughout. "The red systems represent our confederation," Kethra explained. "Over 2,000 star systems, countless worlds, trillions of beings living in harmony under our rule. Your small blue dot here will soon join them." Hana studied the map, noting how the red zones seemed to radiate outward from a central core, swallowing smaller independent systems like a spreading infection. "It's quite impressive," she said carefully. "How exactly does this joining process work?" Kethra's armor plates shifted, perhaps indicating pleasure or amusement. "Simple and efficient. You submit your governing body for processing. Our specialists will evaluate your species' strengths and assign appropriate roles within the Confederation. Some of your kind may serve in our industrial complexes, others in our research facilities. The most promising specimens might even earn positions in our auxiliary forces. The casual way he discussed humanity's future made Hana's stomach turn. These weren't diplomats offering partnership. They were conquerors, presenting an ultimatum wrapped in polite language. "I see," Hana replied, maintaining her diplomatic smile. "This is certainly a significant decision for our species. Thank you for this opportunity, Ambassador. However, we'll need 72 hours to consult with Earth's leadership before we can provide an answer." The holographic display flickered and died. Kithra's companions made sounds that the translator couldn't render, their armor patterns shifting rapidly. For the first time since their arrival, the aliens seemed genuinely surprised. Kethra himself stood motionless for several seconds, his multifaceted eyes studying Hana as if seeing her for the first time. "You wish to delay?" The translator's mechanical voice couldn't hide his confusion. "No species has ever requested time to consider the honor we offer. We appreciate the honor," Hana said smoothly. "But humanity values careful consideration of important decisions. Surely the Confederation can spare 3 days for such a momentous choice." The alien delegation exchanged rapid communications in their native language, sounds like crystals grinding against metal that made everyone in the docking bay wince. Finally, Kethra's translator crackled back to life. "Very well, 72 hours. But know this, Commander Lee Hana of the primitive humans, no species has ever refused our offer and survived to regret it." Dr. Kim Juno's tentacles writhed as he stared at the holographic display floating above his analysis chamber aboard the Veltar mothership. The data streaming from their probes made no sense. In 800 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like the human species. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, his bioluminescent patches flickering with frustration. The translation matrix built into his neural implants struggled to process concepts that had no equivalent in Veltar understanding. His assistant, a smaller creature called Vexhai, scuttled closer on 4 legs. "Doctor, the deep scans confirm the surface readings. The humans truly have no unified command structure." Juno's primary eye stalks focused on the planetary overview. Earth glowed before them, divided into different colored zones representing what humans called countries. Unlike every other species the Confederation had absorbed, there was no single capital, no central brain to cut off, no emperor to replace. "Look at this madness," Juno said, manipulating the display with his secondary tentacles. "They have something called the United States here, which is actually 50 smaller territories that somehow work together. Then there's this European Union, which is 27 completely separate nations that share some laws, but not others. And this China place has over 1 billion humans under one government, but they still argue with everyone else." The hologram zoomed in on various regions. In some areas, humans lived in massive cities with towering structures that scraped the sky. In others, they gathered in small villages that looked barely different from their ancestors' settlements. Some regions showed advanced technology, while others seemed deliberately primitive. "They fight constantly," Vexhai observed, reading from his datapad. "Our monitors detect ongoing conflicts in dozens of locations, yet they also cooperate on massive projects. These space elevators, their orbital platforms, their Mars colonies, somehow they built all of this while disagreeing about everything." Juno's confusion deepened. Every species the Confederation had encountered followed predictable patterns. Strong leaders emerged, centralized power developed, and eventually one authority ruled the entire world. It was the natural order of intelligent evolution. But humans seem to actively resist this progression. "Show me their response patterns during crisis events," Juno commanded. The display shifted to show historical data. When asteroid impacts threatened their world, humans from different nations immediately shared resources and technology. When diseases spread across their planet, competing governments suddenly began working together. When their climate changed dramatically, enemies became allies overnight. "It's impossible," Juno whispered. "They unite without being commanded to unite. They coordinate without central coordination. How do they even communicate decisions?" That's where it gets stranger, Vexhai said, pulling up communication logs. They have something called the Internet. It's like a planetary nervous system, but instead of being controlled by one mind, it connects billions of individual minds. Anyone can say anything to anyone else. Juno studied the data streams flowing across human communication networks. Massive amounts of information moved every second. Humans sharing ideas, arguing, debating, creating, destroying, rebuilding. The chaos was overwhelming. "Look at this," he said, highlighting a particular data stream. During their response to our arrival, they've been sharing everything. Military secrets, scientific discoveries, philosophical debates about how to handle first contact. They're giving away strategic advantages to each other while simultaneously preparing for our potential threat. Ambassador Kethra materialized in the analysis chamber, his armor plates clicking with impatience. "Well, Juno, what weakness can we exploit? Which leader do we eliminate to break their resistance?" Juno's tentacles coiled nervously. "Ambassador, there is no single leader to eliminate. They have hundreds of leaders, and if you remove one, 10 others will take their place. But that's not the strangest part." He gestured to the display showing human governmental structures. They have something called democracy in many regions. The leaders are chosen by regular citizens, and those citizens can remove them if they're unhappy. The leaders serve the people, instead of the people serving the leaders. Kethra's translator crackled with static as it tried to process this concept. That cannot be correct. How do they maintain order? How do they make decisions? Who tells them what to do? They tell themselves what to do, Juno replied, his bioluminescent patches dimming with exhaustion. They have concepts called individual rights and personal freedom. Each human believes they have the right to think, speak, and act as they choose, as long as they don't harm others. They've built entire civilizations around the idea that no one should control anyone else completely. The chamber fell silent, except for the humming of the ship's processors. Vexhai nervously shuffled through more data files. "There's more, Ambassador," the assistant said quietly. "They have something called rebellion written into their nature. When authority becomes too controlling, they actively resist it. They have historical records of overthrowing their own governments when those governments become too powerful. They seem to prefer controlled chaos over enforced order." Kethra's armor plates shifted rapidly, indicating extreme agitation. "This is unprecedented. How have they survived as a species? How have they achieved spaceflight? How did they build those orbital defenses we detected?" Juno manipulated the display to show human technological development. "That's what I've been trying to understand. They achieve things through competition and cooperation happening simultaneously. Different groups race to solve the same problems, sharing some information while keeping other secrets. They advance faster because they have multiple approaches to everything." "Show me their military structure," Kethra demanded. The display revealed humanity's defense networks. Unlike the Confederation's unified command hierarchy, humans had dozens of separate military forces that somehow worked together when needed. Some were national armies, others were space-based fleets, and still others were civilian organizations that could rapidly convert to military purposes. "They don't have a single military," Juno explained. "They have hundreds of militaries that can unite against external threats while maintaining their independence. Cut off one head, and 50 others keep fighting. Destroy one fleet, and 20. Others adapt their tactics." Kethra stood motionless, his multifaceted eyes processing this information. In 8 centuries of conquest, the Confederation had perfected the art of breaking centralized resistance. They would identify the command structure, eliminate key leaders, and watch entire civilizations collapse into submission. But humans had no single command structure to break. They were like a liquid that could flow around any obstacle, reforming. On the other side, stronger than before. "Doctor," Kethra said finally, his voice carrying an emotion the translator couldn't identify, "are you telling me that these primitives have achieved advanced civilization through organized chaos?" Juno's tentacles writhed in what his species considered a gesture of profound uncertainty. "Ambassador, I believe we have encountered something completely new. The humans don't value order over chaos or compliance over disagreement. They seem to thrive on the balance between the two. They are not primitive. They are simply completely different from everything we understand about intelligent life. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. For the first time in Confederation history, they had found a species that might be impossible to absorb. Captain Park Min-ho sat in the dim command center of Lunar Station's military wing, his fingers dancing across holographic displays that most civilians never knew existed. The diplomatic meeting had ended an hour ago, but the real work was just beginning. He opened a secure channel that connected to every human installation across the solar system. "This is Lunar Command activating Protocol 7, he spoke into his headset. "Prepare for unwelcome guests. Repeat, prepare for unwelcome guests." The message traveled at light speed to over 12,000 installations, scattered throughout human space. From the massive orbital platforms around Earth to the smallest research outposts in the asteroid belt, every facility received the same coded warning. Within minutes, humanity began its quiet transformation from a peaceful civilization to a distributed war machine. On Ceres Station, Chief Engineer Kim Nara received the message while inspecting the asteroid mining equipment. She nodded grimly and activated her own secure channel. "All mining crews, we're switching to Configuration Delta. Tell everyone it's the efficiency upgrade." The massive mining ships that carved up asteroids for their precious metals began a subtle but dramatic transformation. Their industrial lasers, designed to slice through solid rock, were recalibrated for longer range and higher intensity. The magnetic accelerators that launched ore containers toward processing stations were quietly adjusted to handle different kinds of projectiles. Within hours, humanity's mining fleet had become a formidable artillery force, disguised as civilian workers going about their daily business. Dr. Lee Yuna was conducting atmospheric research on Europa when the Protocol 7 message reached her ice-bound laboratory. She immediately accessed the hidden compartments built into every human facility, no matter how remote or peaceful their supposed purpose. Emergency fabricators hummed to life, converting the station's scientific equipment into defensive systems. The same instruments that studied Jupiter's radiation became early warning sensors capable of detecting approaching hostile ships. Meanwhile, on Mars, agricultural supervisor Choi Daiho walked through the vast hydroponic domes that fed the growing colony. To any outside observer, the domes looked like peaceful farming communities, with families tending to crops under the red planet's alien sky. But Choi knew the truth about these agricultural facilities. "Initiate harvest protocol," he announced over the colony's communication system. The innocent phrase triggered a cascade of hidden preparations. Beneath the growing fields, automated defense systems powered up. The same atmospheric processors that maintained perfect growing conditions began producing different kinds of gases. The transportation tubes that moved vegetables between domes could now rapidly deploy military equipment to any location on the planet. The space elevators connecting Earth to its orbital infrastructure presented the most visible challenge. These massive structures stretched from the planet's surface to beyond the atmosphere, carrying cargo and passengers in a constant stream of activity. To the Veltar observers, they looked like obvious targets: destroy the elevators and cut Earth off from its space-based resources. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had learned from their own history of warfare. Every space elevator had been designed with multiple purposes. Captain Song Ji-ho, commander of the new Singapore elevator, activated the structure's hidden capabilities. The cargo pods that normally carried supplies suddenly became launch platforms for defensive satellites. The elevator's carbon nanotube cables, stronger than any metal, doubled as the largest railgun ever constructed, capable of accelerating projectiles to incredible speeds. "Cargo Pod 17 is ready for special delivery," Ji-ho reported to Luna. Command, using code words that meant his elevator could now launch defensive platforms anywhere in near-Earth space. Across the solar system, similar preparations were taking place. The orbital solar collectors that powered human civilization began repositioning themselves, their massive mirrors capable of focusing starlight into devastating beams. Communication satellites activated secondary functions, becoming nodes in a distributed sensor network that would make it impossible for enemy ships to move undetected. On the outer edge of human space, the ice miners working the moons of Saturn received their instructions with typical understated efficiency. Supervisor Han Minji coordinated the transformation of ice harvesting equipment into kinetic weapons, platforms. The same systems that captured and processed frozen water could accelerate chunks of ice to weapon-grade velocities. In the cold vacuum of space, an ice cube moving at 50,000 kilometers per hour became as deadly as any military projectile. The beauty of humanity's defensive transformation lay in its subtlety. Every change appeared to be normal civilian activity to outside observers. Mining ships adjusted their operations for increased efficiency. Agricultural domes updated their environmental systems. Space elevators performed routine maintenance. Solar collectors executed orbital positioning adjustments. The Veltar monitoring systems detected all this activity, but their analysis computers dismissed it as typical human inefficiency. Their databases contained detailed studies of 847 conquered species, and all of them had followed predictable military mobilization patterns. When threatened, civilizations built obvious weapons, gathered their forces into defensive formations, and prepared for traditional battles between opposing fleets. Humans did none of these things. Instead, they continued their normal activities. While secretly converting their entire civilization into a weapon, the alien sensors detected increased energy consumption and communications traffic, but these changes appeared random and purposeless. The Veltar had no understanding of distributed warfare, where every civilian facility could become a military asset and every peaceful activity could hide deadly preparation. Lieutenant Park Soo, monitoring alien surveillance from Lunar Station, reported to Captain Minho with barely concealed satisfaction. "Sir, they're completely missing it. Their scans show increased activity, but their computers classify it as normal civilian chaos. They think we're just being typically human, disorganized and inefficient." Minho allowed himself a small smile as he watched the tactical display, showing human preparations across the solar system. Red dots marked fully converted defensive positions, yellow indicated partial readiness, and green showed facilities still in transition. The pattern looked random to untrained eyes, but it represented something unprecedented in galactic history. An entire species preparing for war while maintaining the appearance of peaceful civilian life. "Perfect," Minho said quietly. "Let them keep thinking we don't know what we're doing. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late to stop." The transformation continued throughout the solar system, hidden in plain sight, as humanity prepared to defend itself in a way no other species had ever imagined. Commander Lee Hana walked through the corridors of Lunar Station with measured steps, her polished boots clicking against the metal flooring. Behind her, Lieutenant Chodi carried a simple datapad that contained humanity's response to the Veltar ultimatum. The 72 hours had passed, and now came the moment that would define their species' future. The docking bay had been transformed into a formal meeting chamber, complete with holographic displays and translation equipment. The Veltar delegation waited with obvious impatience, their crystalline armor shifting colors in what their species considered expressions of anticipation. Ambassador Kethra stood at the center, his multifaceted eyes tracking every movement. As the humans approached, Commander Hana, Kethra's translator, crackled to life. "We trust your primitive leadership has reached the obvious conclusion. Present your surrender documents so we may begin the integration process." Behind the ambassador, his military advisor Vel Nash activated a holographic display showing Confederation processing facilities. Images of various species working in massive industrial complexes filled the air, each one labeled with efficiency ratings and productivity metrics. The message was clear. This was humanity's destiny under Veltar rule. Hana maintained her diplomatic composure as she studied the display. She could see representatives of dozens of different species, all wearing the same type of neural control collars, all moving with the mechanical precision of beings who had forgotten what freedom meant. Some had once been proud warrior races, others had been peaceful explorers. Now they were all just components in the Confederation's vast machine. "Your facilities are quite impressive," Hana said, her voice carrying genuine interest. "The scale of your operations is remarkable. You've clearly mastered the art of large-scale organization. Kethra's armor plates shifted to what humans had learned indicated pleasure. Indeed, each species contributes according to their abilities. Your kind shows promise for our research divisions. Human creativity properly directed could serve the Confederation well. Lieutenant Day stepped forward, accessing his datapad with deliberate slowness. The Veltar delegation leaned forward expectantly, their bioluminescent patches brightening in anticipation. For 800 years, this moment had played out the same way across countless worlds. The defeated species would present their surrender, the integration would begin, and another civilization would disappear into the Confederation's collective consciousness. "We've given your offer careful consideration," Hana began, her voice carrying the formal tone of diplomatic protocol. "Our leadership has consulted extensively. We've weighed the benefits of joining your Confederation against our current situation." Kethra's translator hummed as it processed her words. The ambassador's military advisor began preparing integration schedules on his own device, already calculating how many ships would be needed to transport the first wave of human specimens to processing centers. "However," Hana continued, her polite smile never wavering, "we must respectfully decline your generous offer." The translation device sparked and sputtered as it struggled to process words that had never been spoken in this context before. The holographic displays flickered and went dark. For several seconds, the only sound in the chamber was the humming of Lunar Station's life support systems. Kethra stood completely motionless, his multifaceted eyes fixed on Hana as if she had transformed into something incomprehensible. His military advisor's device clattered to the floor, forgotten. The third member of their delegation, a creature called Zethvor who served as their strategic analyst, began making rapid clicking sounds that their translator couldn't interpret. "Decline?" Kethra finally managed, his voice carrying a tone of disbelief that transcended species barriers. "You refuse the honor of joining the Confederation?" "That's correct," Day replied with the same calm politeness. "While we appreciate the opportunity, we've decided that membership in your organization wouldn't be in humanity's best interests." The strategic analyst Zethvor activated an emergency communication link to the mothership, speaking rapidly in their native language. Within moments, additional Veltar officers materialized in the chamber, their armor configured for combat rather than diplomacy. The peaceful meeting had suddenly become a military confrontation. "This is impossible," Kethra snarled, his translator now working overtime to convey his rage. "In 800 years of expansion, no species has ever refused our offer. You cannot simply say no to the Confederation." Hana consulted her own datapad, scrolling through information with casual indifference to the growing tension. "Actually, we can. We've reviewed your historical records that you shared with us. While impressive, they don't include any examples of species with distributed infrastructure like ours. Your previous conquests all followed centralized models. That could be disrupted by removing key leadership or facilities." The military advisor, a creature called Gethran, projected new holographic displays showing the Confederation's war fleet. Massive ships bristling with weapons filled the air. Above them, each one capable of reducing entire continents to ash. "Can you see our power?" he growled. "Your primitive defenses cannot stand against our armada." "Oh, we're not planning to stand against anything," Day said, his tone remaining conversational. "That would be rather inefficient. Instead, we've taken a different approach to the problem." He activated his own datapad, and the chamber filled with real-time displays of the solar system. Red dots marked the positions of human installations, from the massive orbital platforms around Earth to the smallest research outposts in the outer asteroid belt. The number of active defensive positions was staggering. "You see," Hana explained, "while you were giving us time to consider your offer, we used those 72 hours productively. We've distributed our defensive capabilities across 12,000 installations throughout the solar system. Each one is capable of independent operation, and losing any individual facility won't significantly impact our overall capacity." Kethra studied the display with growing alarm. The human defensive network didn't follow any pattern the Confederation understood. Instead of concentrating their forces at key strategic points, they had spread them everywhere. There was no central command to eliminate, no critical infrastructure to destroy, no single point of failure that could bring down their entire civilization. "This changes nothing," Gethran declared, though his armor's color pattern suggested he wasn't as confident as he sounded. "We will simply destroy everything. Your scattered facilities cannot stand against our concentrated firepower." "You're certainly welcome to try," Day replied with the same polite smile that Hannah had been wearing, "though it might take you a while. Our preliminary calculations suggest that eliminating all 12,000 installations would require approximately 18 months of continuous combat operations, assuming no resistance and perfect target acquisition." The Veltar officers exchanged rapid communications in their native language, their bioluminescent patches flashing in patterns that suggested panic. Zethvor was frantically updating tactical assessments on his device, running combat simulations that kept producing the same disturbing results. "Of course," Hannah added conversationally, "those calculations assume that our installations remain passive during your attack. In reality, they'll be shooting back, and since each facility can operate independently, destroying one doesn't prevent the others from adapting their tactics based on what they observe." Kethra's translator crackled with static as it tried to process the implications. "You would fight a war of attrition against the Confederation? Do you have any idea what you're suggesting?" "We're not suggesting anything," Hannah replied. "We're simply declining your offer to join your organization. What happens next is entirely up to you. We'll continue with our normal activities unless you force us to do otherwise." The chamber fell silent, except for the increasingly frantic communications between the Veltar officers and their mothership. For the first time in their history, the Confederation faced a species that had politely but firmly said no to their expansion, and humanity was ready for whatever came next. Admiral Go Yuna stood on the bridge of the orbital defense platform, New Sol, watching through reinforced viewing ports as the once mighty Veltar fleet approached Earth. 6 months of continuous warfare had transformed the aliens' pristine crystalline ships into battered, scarred hulks, barely holding together. What had begun as a confident invasion force of 300 vessels had been reduced to fewer than 50 operational ships, and those remaining showed signs of hasty repairs and jury-rigged systems. The space around Earth told the story of humanity's unconventional victory. Debris fields marked the locations of destroyed alien ships, but scattered among them were the remains of human installations too. The difference was that while every lost Veltar vessel represented irreplaceable technology and trained crews, humanity's destroyed facilities had been quickly replaced by 3 more built from standardized components. "Admiral," reported Captain Kim Tae from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Veltar flagship. Ambassador Kethra is requesting, he's asking for permission to discuss terms." Yuna allowed herself a small smile. The same alien who had demanded humanity's surrender 6 months ago was now begging for negotiation. The transformation had been painful for both sides, but the outcome had surprised everyone, including humanity itself. The war had begun exactly as the Veltar expected. Their massive ships had targeted what appeared to be humanity's most important installations: the space elevators, the main orbital platforms, the primary colonies on Mars and Luna. The first week of fighting had seen spectacular destruction as alien weapons reduced these facilities to glowing debris. But then, something unprecedented happened. Instead of collapsing, humanity's defense network adapted. For every installation destroyed, new ones appeared in unexpected locations. Mining ships that had been carving up asteroids suddenly revealed themselves as mobile weapons platforms. Agricultural domes on Mars began launching swarms of defensive drones. Even the smallest research outposts turned out to have hidden military capabilities. The Veltar found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to die conventionally. They would eliminate what seemed like a critical facility, only to discover that its functions had already been distributed to dozens of other locations. They would concentrate their forces to attack a major human stronghold, only to find themselves surrounded by previously unknown defensive positions that had been quietly building up for weeks. Put him through, Una ordered, settling into her command chair. The main display activated, showing Kethra's familiar form. The ambassador's once pristine armor was now dented and scarred, his bioluminescent patches dim with exhaustion. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship showed obvious battle damage. Admiral Una, Kethra's translator crackled, the device itself showing signs of hasty repair. The Confederation, we request terms for ending this conflict. The words hung in the space between them like a confession of defeat. Around the bridge, human officers exchanged glances of amazement. They had done the impossible. They had forced the mighty Veltar Confederation to ask for peace. I'm listening, Una replied, keeping her voice neutral despite the historic nature of the moment. Kethra's image flickered as his ship's power systems struggled to maintain the connection. We are prepared to offer you autonomous status within the Confederation. Your species would maintain local governance while contributing to our greater purpose. It is more than any other species has ever been offered. Lieutenant Park Jun, Una's tactical officer, pulled up displays showing the current state of the solar system's defenses. Despite 6 months of warfare, humanity's defensive network had actually grown stronger. New installations had been built faster than old ones could be destroyed, and each facility incorporated lessons learned from previous battles. That's generous, Una said, studying the data streams showing Veltar fleet positions. But we have a different proposal. We suggest a mutual defense pact between equals. No subjugation, no absorption, no Confederation control. Partnership. The word equals caused Kethra's translator to spark and stutter. Behind him, other Veltar officers could be seen frantically consulting their databases, searching for precedents that didn't exist. In 8 centuries of expansion, the Confederation had never treated another species as an equal. That is, unprecedented, Kethra managed. The Confederation does not make agreements with equals. We absorb, we integrate, we control. It is the natural order. Natural for you, maybe, Una replied, but we've proven that your natural order isn't the only way to organize intelligent life. We're offering you something completely new, voluntary cooperation instead of forced compliance. Dr. Li Huan, the fleet's xenopsychologist, activated a secondary display showing intelligence reports from throughout Confederation space. Ambassador, while we've been fighting, we've also been listening to your communications. Your member species are watching this conflict very carefully. Many of them are asking questions they've never asked before. The reports painted a picture of growing unrest throughout the Confederation. Species that had been absorbed generations ago were suddenly wondering why they had never been offered the kind of resistance that humanity had mounted. Rebellions were sparking on worlds that had been peaceful for centuries, and Confederation forces were being stretched thin trying to maintain control. You see, Una continued, we're not just offering you an alternative to conquest. We're offering your existing members an alternative to servitude. The age of forced unity is ending, Ambassador. The question is whether the Confederation adapts to this new reality or gets swept away by it. Kethra's armor plates shifted through colors that the humans had learned indicated deep distress. His military advisor whispered urgent calculations about rebellion suppression and resource allocation, painting a picture of an empire stretched beyond its breaking point. What exactly are you proposing? Kethra asked finally. Una activated a holographic display showing humanity's vision for the future. A new kind of galactic community. Species work together by choice, not by force. Everyone contributes what they can and receives what they need, but nobody gives up their freedom or identity. Think of it as organized cooperation instead of organized conquest. The implications rippled through space at light speed. Within hours of the transmission, the proposal was being discussed on every Confederation world. Species that had forgotten the meaning of choice suddenly remembered what they had lost. The rigid hierarchy that had held the Confederation together for 8 centuries began to crack under the weight of a single revolutionary concept: voluntary participation. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. 200 species had demanded their own human deals, renegotiating their relationship with the Confederation from subjects to partners. The empire that had once ruled through fear now struggled to maintain relevance in a galaxy where cooperation was replacing conquest. Yuna stood on the same observation deck where Commander Hana had first met the Veltar delegation, watching as ships from dozens of species moved freely through human space. Former enemies had become trading partners, former subjects had become allies, and the galaxy itself had been transformed by a simple idea that intelligent beings deserved the right to choose their own destiny. For the first time in Galactic history, chaos had defeated order, freedom had conquered control, and the universe would never be the same. The end